Survivor 46 is here, and so is On Fire, the only official Survivor podcast, and we have a twist this season. The winner of Survivor 45, Dee Valladares, will be joining us every week.
We're going behind the scenes of the biggest moments, the how and the why things happen, and the strategy and analysis you can only get from someone like me, a Survivor winner.
Listen to On Fire, the official Survivor podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
Where will you be on Monday, April 8th? If it's looking like a routine post-weekend Monday, you might want to consider playing hooky. On the afternoon of April 8th, a total solar eclipse will be visible along a wide diagonal stretch of the U.S. spanning several southern, Midwest, and East Coast states. The last time a full eclipse took place was in 2017 along a remote western stretch of the country. This time, it's visible over several populated areas with dozens of towns and cities falling within its path. If you miss this one in April, scientists say you'll have to wait until 2044 for the next total eclipse in the U.S. Thinking back, you may remember seeing a partial solar eclipse back in 2017. This is when the moon covers a portion of the sun, leaving behind a crescent shape. In a total solar eclipse, this goes one step further as the moon perfectly passes between the sun and Earth, and for a few short minutes, the circular face of the sun is completely covered. For science journalist and author David Barron, this astronomical phenomenon is unlike anything else.
I'm a science guy. I'm not a spiritual or religious person. I tend to think very logically. But the total solar eclipse was a spiritual experience. I felt connected to the universe in all of its immensity in a way I never had before.
David Barron is a former science correspondent at NPR and the author of American Eclipse. He's seen 8 total solar eclipses in his life. The first was on a beach in Aruba in 1998. He still remembers how he felt in the minutes leading up to the cosmic event.
About 10, 15 minutes before the total eclipse, it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier. Strange things were happening. Daylight just took on a weird cast. Colors didn't look right. Shadows became very strange. On a typical day, shadows have fuzzy edges. As a total eclipse is about to begin, shadows become weirdly sharp. I mean, if you have the sun over your shoulder projecting a shadow of your head onto the ground, as a total eclipse is approaching, you can see the individual hairs on your head projected onto the ground. It's like everything's in bold relief. And then as the total eclipse set in, it was as if someone had just turned off the lights. I mean, daylight just dropped away. And I knew now it was the total eclipse. I couldn't see anything more through the eclipse glasses. And I took my eclipse glasses off because this is the only time it is safe to look toward the sun with the naked eye, and that's during a total eclipse. And I looked in the sky, and I felt like I was on another planet. This was no sky I had ever seen before in my life.
Barron says the sky isn't pitch dark, but it feels like twilight with hues of purple and gray overhead and an orange sunset all around. You can see some stars, and there are also some planets that come into clear view.
I could see 3 planets that time. I could see Mercury, I could see Venus, I could see Jupiter. So here were the planets along the plane of the solar system. I could see them all lined up. And there among the planets, I saw this object that was just strange and wondrous and absolutely gorgeous. It looked like a crown or a wreath shining out in space that was woven out of kind of silvery thread. And that is the sun's outer atmosphere. It's called the solar corona. And it just was dazzling. And it looked nothing like any sun I had ever seen before, but I knew intellectually that I was looking at the sun and I was looking at the planets together. So it was as if I had left our solar system and was looking back, and I could see how the planets revolve around the sun. It was surreal.
And each total solar eclipse is a bit different depending on a variety of factors like the angle of the moon, where you're viewing it from, or the weather conditions that day. For generations, humans have looked up to the sky in awe of this phenomenon. Early scientists also saw it as an opportunity to learn more about our sun and solar system. Go back to 1878, and a young Thomas Edison traveled to the Wild West to see it himself.
He was 31 years old. He was just getting started as an inventor, and he had just become a global celebrity because he invented the phonograph, which was an absolute sensation. Well, Thomas Edison at this stage decided he wanted to be more than an inventor. He really wanted to show himself a serious scientist, and he traveled west with some professors, some academic scientists who were going to study the eclipse. And he brought along an invention that he came up with specifically to study the eclipsed sun, something he called the tasimeter, that was going to detect if the solar corona, the bizarre and beautiful halo that appears around the sun at a total eclipse, to see if it gave off not just light, but also heat, which might provide some clues as to what this thing in the sky is.
Today, thanks to Thomas Edison and other scientists, it's known that the sun's corona does give off heat and can get as hot as 2 million degrees Fahrenheit, according to NASA. Scientists in the 19th century were also curious about findings that pointed to the presence of an undiscovered planet.
There was good reason to believe that the closest planet to the sun was not Mercury. If you look at a solar system chart today, it goes Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and so on. But solar system charts in the mid-19th century started with a planet called Vulcan. It went Vulcan, Mercury, Venus, Earth. Now, Vulcan was a hypothetical planet. There were many astronomers who believed it had to exist because Mercury's orbit didn't make sense otherwise. Mercury acted as if there was some mass between it and the sun that was tugging it along. Now, no one had ever reliably seen Vulcan, but that wasn't the surprise. If it's that close to the sun, it's going to set with the sun. It's not going to be in the sky at night, and you can't see it in the daytime because it'll be lost in the sun's glare.
So, during the total solar eclipse of 1878, when the sun was fully blocked, scientists jumped at the opportunity to see Vulcan through a telescope.
One of the main characters in my book, an astronomer named James Craig Watson from the University of Michigan, he was a highly respected and highly arrogant man. And he was determined to be the person who would find the planet Vulcan. And when James Craig Watson, after the eclipse of 1878, said he found it, well, everyone believed him. But then questions started to arise about, well, how come no one else saw this planet in that spot during the total eclipse? Well, James Craig Watson would hear none of it. And he was determined to prove that he was right. And in fact, he came up with a crazy idea for how to build a telescope that could find Vulcan during a normal daytime, and worked himself so hard that he ended up collapsing and dying a couple of years later.
Today we know there's no planet Vulcan, and Mercury is the closest to the sun. So, why is Mercury orbit so different than all of the other planets?
Isaac Newton, his laws, which generally explain how the planets revolve around the sun, when you get really close to the sun, they don't work quite right. And it was Einstein who solved the riddle. It was his general theory of relativity that explained that when you get close to a really massive object like the sun, it actually distorts space and time. And using general relativity and coming up with what the orbit of Mercury should be, Mercury's orbit fits Einstein's equations just right.
Today, there's still so much scientists don't know about this massive star, but what we do know is that next month, on April 8th, if you have the chance, don't miss this rare cosmic event.
You really feel yourself intimately connected with the people around you and with nature around you. So I advise not only, of course, go see the total eclipse, but go with the people you care about. This will be an event that you will remember for the rest of your life.
To find out more about this topic and our guest, David Barron, and all of our featured guests, visit viewpointsradio.org. Also, check out his book, American Eclipse, available online and in select bookstores. For more behind the scenes and to support our show, follow us at Viewpoints Radio on Instagram, X, and Facebook. This segment was written and produced by our executive producer, Amira Zaveri. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Gary Price. Coming up on Viewpoints.
All that was a direct rebuke to the messaging that we get as older women, that we're sort of on this downhill slide of cognitive decline and frail bones, and certainly, we're boring.
A lesson on venturing outside your comfort zone. Then,
they're very able to put up with noise and traffic and all the other disturbances that humans bring to the environment.
Our long and complicated coexistence with white-tailed deer. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
That's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.
Everybody in your crew identifies as either Big Mac Burger, McNuggets, or McCrispy Sandwich. But you're the Filet-O-Fish Sandwich all day. That crispy fish, that savory tartar sauce, that melty cheese, that pillowy bun. Yeah, you get it. Every time.
And if you love the Filet-O-Fish, right now you can catch 2 of the classics you love for just $6. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.